One ignored warning, one fatal miscalculation. That's all it took to turn peaceful camping trips into the 6 most horrifying outdoor deaths ever recorded. These aren't just tragic accidents from weekend getaways. They're reminders that in the wilderness, nature shows no mercy, and the smallest oversight can become your last mistake. It was May 23, 2015, when 34-year-old Calvin Rhodes decided to test his new hammock setup at a remote pine forest campground in northern Minnesota. Calvin worked as a project coordinator for a mid-sized engineering firm and had a reputation for being methodical yet sometimes impatient with outdoor gear. His camping companions, Marcus Lee and Tasha Nguyen, had arrived earlier that afternoon. Marcus, a 33-year-old auto technician known for his practical approach, immediately noticed the campsite's concerning features. Dead pine trees surrounded their spot, victims of a recent bark beetle infestation. The standing snags displayed obvious decay, hollowed bases, bracket fungi, and peeling bark. Tasha, a 31-year-old office coordinator who always packed safety equipment, had brought a weather radio crackling with wind warnings. Her meticulous nature led her to point out debris scattered around dead tree bases, clear evidence of recent limb failures. Despite these warning signs, Calvin was eager to try his hammock between a live pine and a large dead snag. The deceased tree showed significant decay at its base, with visible rot and a hollow cavity extending several feet up the trunk. Marcus suggested relocating to healthier trees, but Calvin was already threading his suspension system through the anchor points. As afternoon progressed, wind gusts picked up strength, the forest filled with ominous sounds of creaking wood and falling twigs. The compromised snag swayed with each gust, movement becoming more pronounced as wind intensified. Calvin had rigged a bright blue tarp over his hammock, securing it with multiple guy lines staked near exposed roots. When a particularly strong gust hit, Calvin stepped directly under the ridgeline to retention his tarp. This placed him squarely within the fall zone of the deteriorating snag. The wind continued building, and suddenly a large dead branch broke free, crashing down and collapsing one corner of the tarp shelter. The falling limb created a tangle of rope and fabric that restricted Calvin's movement options. As he tried navigating around the guy lines, the main trunk reached its breaking point. The tree sheared near its rotted base, and the upper section began its deadly descent toward the hammock area. Calvin attempted to step sideways to safety, but his right foot became entangled in a taut guy line. The massive trunk struck him across his upper torso and shoulder area, driving him down against the compacted forest floor and buried root system. The impact caused multiple rib fractures, creating a flail chest condition, along with severe internal lung injuries. His left clavicle snapped from the crushing force, and when his head struck the ground, it resulted in significant skull trauma. Marcus and Tasha immediately rushed to help, carefully removing smaller branches to access Calvin's airway. They could see he was struggling to breathe, with his chest moving abnormally. Despite their CPR attempts, the combination of internal bleeding and chest wall instability made effective resuscitation impossible. Tasha climbed to higher ground, where she managed to get intermittent cell phone signal. Emergency responders eventually reached the remote site via a narrow dirt access road, but Calvin had already succumbed to his injuries. Investigation revealed the snag had been compromised for months, with advanced rot throughout its root system. Officials immediately flagged multiple hazardous trees and temporarily closed the area. This tragic incident serves as a stark reminder that dead trees pose serious risks to campers, especially during windy conditions. It was August 14, 2017, when 29-year-old Jade Emerson decided to explore a narrow slot canyon on a high desert plateau in southern Utah. Jade worked as a freelance graphic designer with a passion for adventure photography that led her to seek dramatic landscapes in remote locations. Her camping partner, Lila Moreno, chose to stay at base camp to organize equipment. Lila, a 28-year-old part-time photographer and retail associate, was detail-oriented and optimistic. She had noticed debris lines and driftwood lodged several feet up canyon walls when they arrived, clear indicators of past flooding. The morning sky remained mostly clear locally, but weather advisories mentioned thunderstorms developing over upstream headwaters. Jade planned a solo hike through a scenic section featuring sculpted sandstone, natural chokestones, and narrow passages dropping to chest height. She wore approach shoes and carried a day pack with camera equipment, water, and a windbreaker. No rope or technical gear was brought since the route was considered straightforward. The entry point showed frequent visitor use, with polished sandstone and recent sediment deposits along the wash bottom. Before departing, Lila reminded Jade to turn around if water levels rose or thunder became audible. They agreed on a rendezvous before dusk. As Jade progressed deeper into the narrow section, temperature dropped slightly. A cool breeze funneled through the confined space, carrying a damp, earthy odor that intensified with each step. Within minutes, thin rivulets appeared around her ankles, and flow clarity deteriorated as silt and foam swirled between her steps. Turbidity increased rapidly, and a low, growing roar approached from upstream. Trickles transformed into knee-deep surge in less than a minute. Floating debris, including branches, leaves, and grit, struck her shins, making it difficult to maintain footing on slickened sandstone. Jade attempted to climb onto a minor ledge to escape rising water, but algae-covered rock defeated her attempts to gain purchase above the main channel. Her approach shoes could not grip wet, polished stone effectively enough to lift her from the flow. The first major wave arrived, carrying a substantial log that briefly wedged at a chokestone before breaking free and striking Jade in the hip. The impact rotated her body and forced her into the main flow path where current was strongest. Hydraulic pressure pinned her torso against a narrow constriction. As she pressed against sandstone, abrasions and contusions formed along her elbows, knees, and hips from grinding contact with rough rock surfaces. A second, larger surge rose above shoulder level, and she began inhaling water as flow intermittently submerged her face. She lost the ability to maintain an effective airway while pinned by relentless hydraulic forces. Her pack strap snagged on a small protrusion, momentarily holding her at torso level. However, another powerful pulse rotated her downward, fully submerging her face and upper chest beneath the muddy torrent. The mechanism of death was drowning due to entrapment in the canyon constriction during flash flood, with contributory blunt trauma from debris impact and sustained wall contact. Back at base camp, Lila reported Jade overdue when she failed to return by the agreed time. Rangers and volunteer search teams were notified and staged downstream as floodwaters receded. As water levels dropped, searchers located camera equipment fragments and pack pieces lodged in debris piles. All footprints in the approach area had been erased by silt-laden floodwater. Jade's body was recovered downstream, where it became trapped against a boulder sieve formation. Visible injuries included extensive abrasions and bruising consistent with debris impact and prolonged canyon wall contact during the flood event. It was April 9th, 2016, when 41-year-old Theo Carpenter decided to brave an unexpected cold snap during a spring camping trip at a lakeside campground in northern Wisconsin. Theo worked as a warehouse supervisor and was known for being practical and resourceful, though sometimes overly confident in handling challenging situations with improvised solutions. His camping neighbor, Naomi Price, had set up nearby with her younger brother. Naomi, a 39-year-old home health aide, was naturally conscientious and resourceful, always prepared with extra supplies. She noticed Theo struggling with his gear setup as temperatures dropped below the forecasted range. The campground had recently reopened for the season, and Theo planned this trip for early season fishing. Snow patches remained under dense conifers, and overnight temperatures were forecast to plummet into the low 20s, far colder than his lightweight sleeping system could handle. As evening approached and temperature continued dropping, Theo made a fateful decision to supplement his inadequate insulation. He positioned a small charcoal grill just inside his tent vestibule, reasoning that radiant heat from glowing coals would take the edge off the bitter cold without creating significant fire hazard. A warning placard on the campground bulletin board mentioned carbon monoxide dangers from combustion devices in enclosed spaces, but Theo hadn't read the safety information thoroughly. Wind conditions were remarkably calm, eliminating natural ventilation that might have diluted dangerous gases. Concerned about heat loss, Theo zipped all tent vents completely closed and arranged his cot in a low position. With an active combustion source and sealed ventilation, conditions were perfect for hazardous carbon monoxide buildup throughout the tent's air volume. Neighboring campers, including Naomi, noticed faint smoke odor drifting from Theo's area, but the smell wasn't strong enough to raise alarm. Theo arranged extra blankets and kept the vestibule door mostly closed to prevent cold drafts. As charcoal continued slow combustion throughout the night, it produced carbon monoxide, an odorless gas that mixes readily with air and accumulates in poorly ventilated spaces. With vents sealed, concentration of this deadly gas rose steadily, while effective oxygen availability dropped to dangerous levels. Increasing carbon monoxide levels caused Theo's carboxyhemoglobin levels to rise, severely impairing his blood's oxygen delivery to vital organs. His breathing gradually became shallow as hypoxia deepened, but he remained unconscious without attempting to reposition or open ventilation. Glowing coals continued producing carbon monoxide throughout the cold night. Calm atmospheric conditions and the closed vestibule further limited air exchange that might have diluted lethal gas concentration. By early morning, carbon monoxide had reached fatal concentrations. Theo's circulation and respiration ceased without signs of struggle or gear displacement, indicating he likely lost consciousness before realizing the danger. The next morning, Naomi approached to offer hot coffee and check on her neighbor after the brutally cold night. Receiving no response, she alerted a maintenance worker making early rounds. The worker unzipped the vestibule and immediately detected the inactive grill and Theo's unresponsive form. Emergency responders moved Theo to open air and initiated resuscitation, but findings were consistent with prolonged carbon monoxide exposure and no sustained pulse was obtained. Theo was pronounced deceased on scene. Investigators measured hazardous residual carbon monoxide levels in the tent and noted sealed vents and combustion source as primary factors. Following this incident, authorities reinforced prohibitions on heaters and grills in tents regardless of temperature. Additional warning signage with larger icons was installed at water pumps and trailheads throughout the facility. It was October 2nd, 2018, when 52-year-old Marilyn Cooper decided to capture the perfect seascape sketch from a wind-exposed coastal bluff campsite along the rugged Oregon shoreline. Marilyn worked as a technical illustrator and had developed a passion for plein air sketching that drew her to dramatic coastal locations. Her longtime friend Owen Hart had accompanied her on this trip. Owen, a 55-year-old bookstore clerk known for his steady demeanor, had been Marilyn's hiking partner for over a decade. He possessed a cautious personality that often balanced Marilyn's more adventurous tendencies when finding the perfect vantage point for her artistic work. Their campsite sat approximately 70 feet above wave-cut rock platforms extending into the Pacific Ocean. The bluff edges showed clear signs of ongoing erosion from recent storms, with visible fissures and cracks running parallel to the cliff face. A wooden barrier had been installed near the most eroded segment with caution signage. The purpose of their weekend trip was taking advantage of dramatic autumn light for Marilyn's seascape studies. She brought lightweight sketching supplies and a compact camera. Informal footpaths skirted dangerously close to the bluff edge, offering unobstructed views irresistible to artists. As afternoon progressed, wind conditions intensified significantly. Strong gusts pushed loose sand and grit over the bluff lip. Owen noted evening high tide would reduce accessible rock platforms below, making rescue operations more complicated. Despite Owen's recommendation to stay behind the established barrier, Marilyn was drawn to a grassy pad near a hairline crack in the bluff edge. This position offered an unobstructed coastline view for her planned sunset sketch. Wind continued building, and Owen noticed the hairline crack near Marilyn's position seemed to widen with each powerful gust. He suggested she move to a more stable location, but Marilyn was focused on capturing changing light conditions. As Marilyn adjusted her position for a better angle, she placed her forward foot near the hairline crack Owen had been monitoring. Constant wind erosion and wave action had undermined this section's structural integrity more than was visible. Subtle subsidence occurred beneath her foot as the lip began shearing along the existing fracture plane. The cliff edge section that appeared stable suddenly gave way, removing her primary support and creating an immediate vertical drop. Marilyn fell approximately 70 feet, initially striking a sloped cliff section that redirected her trajectory toward the boulder-studded platform. The first impact produced severe fractures to her lower limbs and pelvis, causing her to roll toward a second impact point. Her secondary contact occurred when she struck her upper torso and head against a large, protruding rock formation. The audible impact was clearly heard by Owen from the cliff top, and he immediately recognized the situation's severity. Marilyn came to rest near a tidal channel where waves were washing over the platform as tide continued rising. Injuries from the high fall included severe blunt head trauma, multiple rib fractures with probable lung laceration, and significant internal hemorrhage. Owen immediately signaled other campers and directed one to contact emergency services, providing approximate cliff height and describing challenging conditions rescue personnel would face due to rising tide. Emergency responders coordinated technical rope rescue due to cliff height and dangerous tidal conditions. Initial approach was delayed to ensure rescuer safety as waves continued washing over the platform. When medical personnel reached the platform, they assessed Marilyn and determined her injuries were consistent with fatal trauma from the high fall. Officials documented cliff edge erosion patterns and fresh fracture lines adjacent to the collapse site. The hazardous area was cordoned off with additional signage installed. It was September 19, 2015, when 37-year-old Reed Donovan decided to embark on a solo weekend photography and birdwatching expedition in a remote backcountry basin in northern Montana. Reed worked as a quality control inspector for a mid-sized manufacturing company and was known for his methodical approach to work and growing passion for wildlife photography. Earlier that day, Sarah Patel had passed through the area while conducting volunteer trail steward duties. Sarah, a 32-year-old part-time barista at a neighborhood coffee shop, was known for her patient and methodical personality. She encountered Reed setting up his campsite in a well-traveled wildlife corridor. The location Reed chose showed clear signs of recent large animal activity, including overturned logs, scattered scat, and well-worn game trails converging near a seasonal water source. The area was particularly attractive to wildlife due to abundant berry patches reaching peak ripeness. Reed positioned his cook area and tent in close proximity, problematic when food odors are involved. His cookware retained faint odors from previous trips, and he left a pot with food remnants under a nearby tree rather than properly cleaning it. Reed stored his remaining snacks in a soft-sided bag inside his tent vestibule rather than using a bear-resistant canister. During his afternoon photography session, he observed fresh tracks near a berry thicket that appeared to be from a medium-sized bear. Despite this clear indication of recent bear activity, he did not adjust his food storage practices. After darkness fell, rustling and huffing sounds began occurring near Reed's cook site. The vestibule wall flexed inward as an animal investigated the stored food bag, drawn by residual odors. A bear entered the camp zone, attracted by unsecured food items and lingering cooking scents. The animal was already in close quarters when Reed became aware of its presence through sounds and movement. Reed exited his tent and confronted the situation directly. He began shouting loudly while waving a flashlight to discourage the animal, moving laterally to position himself between the bear and the forest edge. The bear, having been rewarded by food sense and finding itself in a confined space, made a short bluff charge that escalated into direct contact when the distance closed to just a few yards. During his attempt to back away, Reed stumbled over a low fallen log and fell onto his side, losing his grip on the flashlight. The bear made forceful contact with Reed's upper body, delivering powerful swipes that caused deep lacerations to his arm and crushing injuries to his chest. Reed attempted to crawl toward denser brush cover, but the bear made additional contact before retreating toward the cook area and moving off into the surrounding forest. The combination of severe lacerations and crushing chest trauma resulted in significant internal bleeding that progressed rapidly. Reed's breathing became increasingly shallow as hemorrhagic shock developed, and he remained near the fallen log, partially concealed by low brush vegetation. The mechanism of death was hemorrhagic shock and traumatic chest injury from bear contact, with secondary airway compromise due to his body position. Early the following morning, Sarah returned during her regular patrol duties. She immediately observed disturbed soil, drag marks, and scattered camping gear, indicating a serious incident had occurred. Sarah alerted authorities, and responders followed obvious sign from the cook site to the brush where Reed was located unresponsive. His injuries were incompatible with survival. Wildlife officers documented unsecured food items, tent vestibule damage consistent with animal investigation, and tracks leading to and from the campsite. Area managers issued an advisory requiring proper food storage and implemented temporary closure of nearby campsites to reduce bear habituation risk. It was June 17, 2018, when 26-year-old Paula Jennings decided to join a group river crossing to reach a scenic midstream island for photographs at a riverside campground in the Pacific Northwest. Paula worked as a marketing coordinator for a regional nonprofit and was known for being adventurous and spontaneous, sometimes making decisions without fully considering potential risks. The group outing had been organized by Dylan Brooks, a 27-year-old delivery driver known for his easygoing personality. Also present was Mei Chen, a 25-year-old graduate research assistant in environmental science, who possessed an attentive and risk-aware personality. Recent rainfall had significantly elevated the river's flow levels, and the water appeared turbid with visible standing waves and submerged obstacles. Most participants wore sandals that provided minimal ankle support. A ranger information board mentioned dangers of cold water shock and foot entrapment hazard. The group briefly discussed the warnings and agreed to stay together during the crossing. Mei Chen pointed out the fast-moving mid-channel current and suggested selecting a crossing route that would minimize exposure to the deepest sections. However, Paula chose a line slightly downstream of the main group's path, stepping from a stable cobble bar into the opaque, fast-moving water. The riverbed's surface was highly irregular, composed of loose stones that shifted unpredictably under body weight and water pressure. As Paula stepped off a submerged rock, her right foot became wedged between two larger stones positioned in a narrow cleft beneath the surface. The powerful current immediately pushed her forward, causing her knee to bend as she dropped into a partial kneeling position that submerged her torso intermittently. Her attempts to pull her foot upward were unsuccessful due to hydraulic pressure created by the flowing water, which forced her leg deeper into the crevice between rocks, creating an increasingly tight trap. Dylan and Mei quickly moved to her position, forming a human chain to provide stability and leverage. However, their combined efforts could not generate enough force to counter the relentless current pressure. Paula's head began dipping repeatedly below the waterline as small waves passed over her position. She started aspirating river water and coughing violently, which compromised her ability to maintain an effective airway. The group attempted to rotate Paula's body to change the angle of her trapped foot, but the strong current knocked them off balance. A rope was thrown from shore by other campers, but without a proper harness, it provided limited leverage and risked pulling Paula sideways into deeper water. Cold water temperature began impairing Paula's muscle function and coordination. Her ability to hold her breath became increasingly compromised as hypothermia set in. After several cycles of submersion, Paula's effective breathing ceased entirely. The combination of cold water, physical exhaustion, and repeated aspiration had overwhelmed her body's ability to maintain basic life functions. The mechanism of death was drowning secondary to foot entrapment, with contributory factors including hypothermia and blunt trauma to her leg. Emergency responders arrived equipped with specialized throw bags and pry tools. They established secure positions upstream and downstream from Paula's location to reduce hydraulic force. Using a systematic lever technique, rescuers separated the rocks enough to free Paula's foot. She was immediately moved to shallow water, where resuscitation protocols could be implemented. Despite following standard drowning resuscitation procedures, no sustained pulse could be obtained, and Paula was pronounced deceased at the scene. Officials documented the elevated flow conditions, lack of protective footwear, and Paula's downstream angled crossing attempt as key contributing factors. Signage was updated to include diagrams illustrating foot entrapment mechanisms. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more? Click on your screen now.